Hello and welcome back to Monday Morning Detective, the podcast. I'm your host, Gino Scala, and this is episode 51. Today we're going to tackle the general subject of the Gilgo Beach serial killer. Now, this is a huge story, not only in its popularity, but in the length of time and the amount of information, or misinformation for that matter, that is out there. And quite frankly, I have not been monitoring this story prior to or since the arrest of the suspected serial killer, Rex Hoyerman. And I call him T-Rex because that helps me remember his name, and also the fact that he was 6'4", 300 plus pounds. So he's a big man. In any event, I was well aware of these of the murders for many years. It's been going on for quite a long time. Most were sex workers. Most of the victims, if not all, we're not sure yet. Most of the victims were sex workers that were identified. To give you just a brief understanding of the situation, Gilgo Beach in New York is a strip of beach. And in between the street or the highway and the beach was a brush type of land. Overgrown bushes and stickers and things of that nature. It's kind of a water barrier. But also, more importantly, it was a barrier to keep people from parking and then walking through and getting to the beach. And this strand, I don't know how long it was. Could have been 10 miles or so. I'm not quite sure. But it was very dense, very thick. It had not been thinned out. There were no fires or anything of that nature. And there were residents in the area, as you might expect, some beachfront property and such. So very well-to-do people live back here, doctors, attorneys, etc. And they apparently used a lot of escorts and called on a lot of evening company where the female would be escorted by a driver, and the driver would wait outside as she did her business inside. Well, over a period of time, it was being reported that these girls ended up missing. And the first indication that there was any serious issues was, and I don't know the victim's name, but one of the first that they reported on was a girl who was running around, banging on doors, saying she was being chased, being followed, and she suddenly disappeared. And they found her sometime later within these thickets, having run through, probably under the influence of drugs, because no one else would, or, in a case of trying to save themselves, they ran through this dangerous stuff, hurting themselves. Her clothes were torn off as a result of the thickets and things of stickers and things like that. And she apparently died from exposure, from being out in the elements. That's how I recall that. During this search, they found other skeletal remains because no one has been in this area. There's no reason to be in this area. It's so dense that you literally can't walk through it, and they weren't about to cut it all down. And at that time, they have since, as it looks like on Google Maps anyway. And once they started finding bodies of other sex workers, then they decided they had a serial killer. Now, one of the issues I have with this case is that just the name Gilgo Beach, I mean, where the hell does that come from? I would hope they rename that pretty soon. But that's just an aside. They did find like 7 or 8, maybe 10 victims, including an Asian male who may have been a transvestite or transgender. They don't know yet. The skeletal remains of a baby, but not matched to any of the bodies there. But there's some farmland about 10 or 20 miles away where some of the body parts of these Gilgo Beach victims were located and uncovered. So it's a very, very strange case, very little information, or actually overwhelming amount of information that I've yet to sort through. But I am looking forward to ID or one of the true crime stories on TV to do a 3-day special on this, because there is quite a lot of information out there to follow up on. And I quite frankly, haven't been doing it. However, the purpose of this podcast, essentially, and we may, we'll probably end up doing many more as we did with the Idaho serial killer. Now we're getting stories, headlines, that are really silly and quite frankly unnecessary. I don't find them interesting. I saw several stories of where Google Maps satellite picked up this person's image. I guess there are people out there that go through Google Maps satellite in the area of New York and Gilgo Beach and things of that nature, see if they could find this guy. And they have found this guy walking along the streets, not at the beach, but in the city where he worked or where he lived. Okay, that's, interesting for about 30 seconds. Some people have nothing but time on their hands. I just read another story where a retired police officer was on the train with this guy, T-Rex, and Rex confronted him over something. The police officer did not say what it was. He could have been staring at him. He could have bumped into him. But whatever it was set off Rex. And Hoyerman approached him and started chastising him and cursing him out on this train. Well, the guy blew it off as, this is typical New York behavior, and it is. If you look at someone too long, or you glance down at their shoes, or you're talking on the phone and they think they're talking to you because you have an earpiece or something of that nature. Plus, this guy was a large individual, so he was quite intimidating, and I think that was part of his demeanor. He liked to intimidate people. And according to this police officer, Hoyerman was had an attitude like that was his train, and he will, tell people, he will push people around. Well, anyway, this officer gets off at a stop, walks up the stairs, and there's Hoyerman again at the top of the stairs, ready to confront him again. Now this guy has taken the argument from the train to the streets, and he's not even sure what it's about. But when when Rex Hoyerman's booking photo hit the press, this guy came forward and talked about this incident. Now, again, it's slightly interesting. Clearly, in my opinion, the police officer was selectively editing the story. He himself could have been the instigator. We don't know. Now, of course, there are stories where Hoyerman had a arsenal, quote unquote, arsenal of weapons. We don't know how many. He was licensed. He had multiple licenses, which gave them an indication that he had these weapons, which is why the decision was made to take him into custody on the streets as opposed to at his residence, to prevent any kind of shootout or hostage situation. So this man is in custody. Another quick story is that a census taker, I believe it was, went to his house, was invited in. He gave the information, and she came out and told everybody it was a hoarder's house, unclean, unkept, and she couldn't understand how anybody lived in that. Well, I've witnessed a lot of those homes in my career, and it is stunning how that happens, but it happens. This guy was, I think we're going to find he's, clearly deranged, and so forth. But the fact is, he got away with this for quite a while, many, many years. Now, again, I'm interested in knowing more about the beach, the bodies found at Gilgo, as well as this farmland several miles away, and how they're connected, because they are. Body parts of some of the victims were found at that other location. Now, whether or not they were trophies that he kept at his residence and then decided to dump them at a later time, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. But it is very interesting. This guy was the definition of a monster. And the fact is, there are 100 plus such monsters running around as we speak in the United States. They are going on. There are serial killers out there whom we haven't even discovered yet because the bodies haven't been discovered. This makes for quite an interesting story. I'm looking forward to it as it goes on, and we'll be hearing about it for a long time. I don't think this guy is ever going to confess or say anything. And that'll be it for episode 51, The Gilgo Beach Killer, Rex Hoyerman, and we'll talk to you on the next episode. Have a great day.